Tonight we begin the VASD program's year-long Collapsing Time lecture series. This series challenges a singular perspective of time by presenting manifold interpretations of time's malleability, while considering how flattening past, present, and future through creative models can generate new experiences of time beyond the structural limitations we are so familiar with. I find it very fitting to begin the series with tonight's presenter, artist David Horvitz, not just because his work is so often interested in time and space, but also because the very first email I ever received from David in November 2014 bore the subject line, "An email at 5 a.m. Time was part of our conversations literally from the very start, and I'm thrilled to have him initiate this series. David is joining us from his home in Los Angeles, California. His expansive and borderless body of work is presented through the forms of photographs, books, performances, memes, and the use of mail art with postal dispatches. His actions often explore varying conceptions of time and space, interpersonal relationships, and the dissemination of images. Collecting images, texts, and objects from the internet, the postal system, libraries, and airport lost and found services, he embraces serendipity and chance by allowing these findings to develop, spread, and in the long term, get out of hand. This practice produces simultaneously poetic and mischievous work. National and international venues exhibiting David's work include the New Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Brooklyn Museum. He has created projects with Recess, Triple Canopy, and Rhizome, among others. The artist also founded the Porcino Gallery in Berlin and Gallery Morel in Los Angeles. In David's work, he has mused about shifting the meaning of the motto Carpe Diem to denote a literal and active assertion of control over structures like time that dictate our lives. This evening, David will discuss a group of works that explore time zones, longitude lines, jet lag, synchronicity, standardized time, subjective time, and other temporal miscellany. He offers unfamiliar perspectives and methods of telling and measuring time that make the abstract literal and the universal personal. He resurfaces antiquated and experimental time measuring techniques. He marks time by weather or location at sea. He tells time by physical orientation to the sun. He marks the hours through personal relationships and the distance between them. Glass vases made from an hour's worth of sand, and ocean water collected at the point where the Alaska and Pacific time zones meet. And he'll share much of this with us tonight in his lecture titled Nautical Dusk, which will be very appropriately presented using an alternative minute. Please join me in welcoming David Horvitz.
Oh, thanks. Hello. Thank you. Oh, should we take this? Yeah. Hi. Thank you. Can you hear me? It's like a hum. I always think a long time about what image to start with. This is my cat, Endymion. And there were some hourglasses here, so I thought it was fitting. Yeah, so I'm going to talk. I make a lot of things, and then it's like, I always have a problem, like how many things I should talk about. So I'm going to go fast, and then maybe go slow, and then maybe get ADD. But feel free to interrupt me and ask questions, or tell me if something is confusing. All right, I'm going to begin. Oh, we have this clock. So this clock. The lecture series is called Collapsing Time, and then this is something I've wanted to do for a while. Basically, I've created a new minute, and the idea is it's a minute that's it's still 60 seconds, but then I guess it's also a new second too. So the second is a little longer than a normal second, so then the minute is also a little longer than a normal minute, so in a sense, time is going a little slower. So my talk will be about 45 minutes on this new time. So maybe we could all like slow down a little bit with like a coffee. So that's the idea of the new. Sorry. All right. I've also decided to show these things, which I've never shown before and I've never talked about, but because of the subject matter. So these were just screenshots I made today on various websites. Here you can see it's my name, my birth date, 1981. Here, where am I born? 1980, 1982, 1983, 84, 77. This is 61. This is crazy. 70, this is in Danish, 72, and 85. I think that was, yeah. So this is just like also me kind of like messing around. Whenever anyone asks me for an artist bio, I always change my date. Just to create misinformation in the world. So then you have someone like, I was trying to then go on to Wikipedia and like cite, it was like, oh, here is this, 85, 84, 83, 77. So nobody really knows unless you booked my flight. Yeah. So I'm going to start, the first project I'm going to talk about is called The Distance of a Day. And this is my mother. In the photograph she made in Los Angeles, in Palos Verdes. It's a peninsula in the south, the southern part of Santa Monica Bay. And if you look in her glasses, you could see her camera, and you could also see her phone, like taped to a banister, and she's making a video. So I asked her to make a video for me of the sunset in Los Angeles on a certain day of the year. And at that same moment in time, I was in the Maldives making a video of the sunrise. So the piece, I mean, it's a really simple, like materially, it's just two iPhones, two videos, and they're shown together. Originally, they were shown on the same iPhones that made the video, so it was like the same phone that made the image is also the same that displays the image. It's also this like time-telling device. It's also this device that locates us in space, in which we keep our schedules on. So it's all about like orientation. And so this was my mom's, and then this was the phone I was using. I don't show them like this anymore because I put them in an exhibition in New York, and then they got FedEx back to my gallery in Berlin, and they got stolen because it was like two iPhones. So somewhere in Memphis, there's the two original phones exist. Which it was like, for me, it was kind of a relief, because then I could just show the piece now on any iPhone. I don't have to worry about setting this. So this is called, and they're like about 8 minutes each, and this is what they look like installed. There's two people looking at them. It's called The Distance of a Day, and it's kind of a play with the idea of distance in terms of like space and time, and this idea of like the sunrise and the sunset as this place where like the day is demarcated. So here's a location on Earth where the day starts, and here's a location where the day ends, and that distance of space or time in between, but also happening at the same moment. So that was made a few years ago, I think, 2013. And yeah, if anyone, I'm just going to like go through projects. So if anyone wants to ask something about something, oh yeah. It was just to keep them charged. But I also liked, I don't think you could see this video, I've seen the photo, they were kind of twirled together. And like that was like, some of these decisions are like last minute, like, do we have the chargers or do we not have the chargers? Do we cross the chargers or not cross? So there wasn't really, it was more practical. And they're long. We had to get super long ones. Like no one has these. So to another project about time. Not all of my work is about time, but I'm like kind of like consolidating a lot of it here because of the collapsing time subject. This is called Let Us Keep Our Own Noon. And this is a bell, it's a bronze bell that was made in France, and I think it was 1742. And it used to hang in a church tower and ring the time of the day. And I found this in Berlin in a bell shop. And I asked this German bell foundry to melt it down. This is the bronze. And to make small hand-sized versions of the same bell with the same bronze. So it ended up being 47, which was an arbitrary number. And so it's hung in an installation, an exhibition. And then at high noon, which is the moment when the sun is at the highest point in the sky, which is different from noon on your clock. I mean, unless you live in like Greenwich. So there was a point in history before the creation of time zones when noon was for everyone, is when it's like you live in relationship to the sun. So wherever you live, it's like you have your own local time. If you live in Denver, or if you live in Pueblo, or if you live in Los Angeles, or even if you're super close, everywhere has its own distinct time. And so the title of it is Let Us Keep Our Own Noon, and that was taken from this pamphlet I found that was, I think it was from Boston, that was protesting the creation of time zones because this one town would lose its noon, because they were like, noon would now be when it's 12, no longer when it's like 12. And so that's where the title came from. And so when the piece is activated by ideally 47 people, they meet at local noon in the installation, and they ring, I can't remember what it was. I think they ring 12 to mark the time together. And then the idea is everyone slowly disperses into the local area. So this photograph's in Copenhagen. So people left the gallery and walked around the neighborhood. Or this is the new museum in New York, and people went out the front door and walked through Lower East Side. And the performance ends when a performer can't hear someone else. So in a sense, the ending there's actually 47 different endings because it's all subjective to the person ringing. And the idea is that like together in the very beginning, you're kind of ringing the time together and you're synchronized. And slowly as you wander off, everyone kind of falls out of sync. And as you kind of start to create your own temporality and you start to ring at your own rhythm. And it's this kind of idea of like subjective time and like what does it mean to have like your own time that's not like the time of like the clock. And sometimes, I don't have a photograph of it, but sometimes I have like this melted, rusted metal that was pulled from the fire that's shown with like on a pedestal. Here are some posters, screen printed from a series. It's like a clock that falls asleep, a clock that is wound by the wind, a clock that follows the shadow of cats, my cat. So the shadow idea was like referencing like a sundial, but it was also slightly referencing this thing I read where supposedly Japanese samurai could tell the time of the day by the eyes of a cat, by looking at the dilation of the pupil. So they would just see a cat and maybe it's cloudy, and they go, oh, it's 3 o'clock, it's like time to kill the emperor or whoever. But so these were published in, I call them proposals for clocks. And a lot of my work is like, the process is kind of organic and not defined. So I made these and they're screen printed, and they were produced in Paris. And then there's another one that's not in the photo, that's like the length of a heartbeat. And then I did one in Japanese, and then I did one I'm showing these in Iceland in October. and we decided to wheat paste them across the city. And then before reprinting them, I decided to start changing all of them. So it was now it's clocked as well by the sea, and then it translated into Icelandic and changing it different. So if you're reading in Icelandic, it's different from English. So it's like part of my process of like constantly, this thing's like kind of organically changing and turning into different things. This is also these glass things I made, which I'll talk about later. Oh, what time is it? I don't know, 6:50? So these were referenced in the intro. There's 3 flower vases, and each vase, does everyone know how glass is made? Glass is made from sand. So I took a sand timer that was a 1 hour sand timer, and I broke it open. I dumped out the sand, and I weighed that amount of sand. And then using that same weight, each of these were made. So each of these, in a sense, is made from an hour's worth of sand, according to this one sand timer that I had. And so each of these is like a different shape of an hour. And this was kind of a reference to this Marcel Duchamp piece, in which he takes a meter-long piece of string and he throws it in the air and traces how it falls 3 times to kind of redefine the meter. So in a sense, I'm not redefining the hour, but it's like looking at different shapes of the hour. And also, the roses, so when it's shown in the exhibition, the instructions are that roses are put in it, and the name of the rose has a reference to time. So in this exhibition, which was in Los Angeles, the gallery found a rose called Patience. And this was also shown in somewhere in Switzerland, and the gallery found a red rose called Coffee Break, which is kind of funny, and another one that I can't remember. And so the idea is like it could be any rose, but the name has to have some kind of reference to like some idea of time. All right, so this is where the title for the lecture was called Nautical Dusk, which was the name of a piece. The materiality of the piece is the closing time of the gallery. So for every day of the exhibition will change its normal closing time to the time of nautical dusk. And nautical dusk is this moment that happens after sunset, which is when the horizon disappears, and it's when like the sky and the sea become indistinguishable. And it was a moment that was used for sailors when they were navigating, because they would need to use the horizon to like look at the stars and do that. You know what I'm talking about? That thing, sextant, yeah. And so this is, I mean, obviously it's this moment that no one notices anymore, because everyone already, like, we always know where we are. But I like this idea of like this kind of like small, unnoticeable moment that kind of reorganizes the gallery's schedule. And so this note is put onto the front door of the gallery. And every day it changes. And so each day it's probably like, you know how like the sunset changes by a few minutes depending on where you live? This will change each day. And it could be like 8 o'clock at night, or if this was in like Sweden in June, it could be like 5 a.m. I don't know. It's only been shown, it's never been shown in like a crazy place, but hopefully one day. So yeah, that's Nautical Dusk. And this was like part of a series in which I was like playing with opening and closing times. And I did this other exhibition that opened the same day my friend had a baby. And so obviously you don't know when someone will have a baby unless they're having a C-section. And so we only had a due date. So it was due January 3rd. And then we couldn't announce when it was actually going to open because we didn't actually know. And the gallery actually came into this problem where they wanted to make a Facebook event page. And you can't make a Facebook event page unless you know when the event is going to happen. And it was like, well, we don't know when it's going to happen, so we can't promote this. So we made this image, and they had it on the gallery website. And then finally, when the baby came, I like called the gallery. I was in Warsaw, and then we went to the gallery. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We opened the gallery and we like texted everyone. And slowly over the course of a few hours, people started to show up, which is kind of nice because it was like kind of at the speed how information travels. So someone got an email after they got out of the movie theater, or someone like was at dinner and they saw the text come in, and slowly like people came. And so that was, again, it was like this idea of like kind of like deprofessionalizing the gallery's schedule, in a sense of like imagining the schedule and the timekeeping of the gallery, but in reference to like the time of like one's body, human time, or maybe even lunar time, if you believe that the moon might affect the birth of when people were born. So it was that in the same sense of like we're following a clock. Like this was like my friend was like the clock. I'm not going to talk about this. No, I'm just kidding. These are seahorses mating. So I'm interspersing my non-time projects within the time projects. This is a piece I did at Frieze Art Fair in New York a couple years ago. So Frieze has a series called Frieze Projects. It's like non-gallery affiliated projects in the art fair. And so I was asked to do a project, and I was like, all right, I want to hire a pickpocket. So the Frieze project manager had to go find a pickpocket in New York. And then we found like 3, and then I interviewed them and saw who had the best technique. And then the pickpocket was hired to, instead of stealing from people, he was distributing an artwork throughout the fair secretly. And the art fair is like, I don't know if you've ever been to an art fair. It's like being in a carnival. It's like your attention is like come totally under assault. It's like you're in a war. It's like basically everyone is like your friends, and then like all these people you know, and then like all these things to look at, and like everything is like calling for you to like look here, look here, look here. So the idea was like in this kind of space where everyone is kind of like in this daze, this person is going to wander through and place these objects into people's pockets. This is crazy. So no one, I didn't want anyone to know who the pickpocket was, but obviously like the curator knew, and some of the Frieze people, and so they went around and photographed him. This guy here was working for a newspaper who was actually he was doing a piece about this project and trying to find him. And then later I was sent the press images, and I was like, oh my God, like he's interviewing someone about the project while she is getting this object put into her bag. It was crazy. And if you look at you see a still photograph, so you could kind of see like it looks so obvious what's happening, but you have to realize that everyone here is in constant motion, and everyone is like looking at their phone and like spinning around. So he did it about 800 times, and he said he got caught like 5 or 6 times. He was good. And, huh? Oh, what did he say when he got caught? I think he just ran away. That's what I told him to do. And the other thing is, this was like kind of what was announced. So it didn't, and then there was also a little text, but you only knew that so if you did catch him and you knew about the project, you'd be like, oh, it's the project. But there's probably there's so many people at this fair, and maybe only 5% are reading the actual pamphlet. So most of the people don't even know. And most of the people, when they get this thing, which I'll show you, might not even know what it is or why it's in their pocket or in their purse. Or maybe they'll find it. This is also about time too, because like they might find it in 5 minutes, or they might find it in an hour, or they might find it in their washing machine, or they might find it in their bag like 3 months later. And the piece is a small sculpture of 2 seahorses mating. And does anyone know how seahorses mate? Yeah, so the female will lay eggs into the male's pouch, and then the male will carry the eggs, and then they're born out of the male. But the moment, like all of these images are like the moment when they're like both of them are like embracing each other, and she's putting her eggs into him. And it's kind of like similar to like this pickpocket putting this thing into people's bags. And then obviously, like nobody knew what the object was. And then when people start finding it, I don't know, I don't know what people's reactions are. So I just go on to, I was going on Instagram and I was looking at people who were tagging freeze and seeing who, if anyone, posted these. And then I found some. And so I found people who like knew who, like what it was, but then other people were like this guy was like, huh? Like, I have reasons to believe this. Please reveal yourself. So this person probably didn't know about the project. Huh? Well, I didn't, but the project, it was like, you could piece it together, like after. Yeah, so this, I mean, I didn't contact anyone and tell them it was me. But if this person read a newspaper article or saw someone else, so it also happens in like this kind of like space of like people talking and like, supposedly someone witnessed a line for like the VA, like there was like, the people were in line to get like a car home, and someone found it in line, and they were like, what is this? And then everyone in line started talking about it until it got to the end of the line when someone knew what it was, and then that information went back down the line. It was kind of funny. But now, like, if you look it up, you know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know where it came from, because there were, I think, like 800 of them that were distributed. So here is, I make a lot of books, artist books. This one is called Sad Depressed People. And it's a collection of stock images of depression. This is like Corbis, that's Getty. This is like all of the tags that were alphabetized in the back. So, sometimes I do a reading of them, because this is really good. It's like crisis, cry, crying, day, death, defeat, dependency, depression. I did a reading of these once, but I have a lot of stuff. I'm going to keep going. But I'm not going to talk too much about this because I just wanted to lead this into the next project. But this was an artist book I made that was kind of like research material turned into an artist book. Oh, this is funny. So I found this on Walmart.com, which I don't know exactly how it ended up here, but I could guess that it got through the distributor, probably through Amazon, and then they probably then, like an umbrella organization, then sent it out to other places. But because I found this here, we had the book launch at Walmart. So, and this is also part of my practice where I went to Vancouver to do the book launch, and we didn't know what we were going to do. And then last minute, we're like, oh, let's go to Walmart and do it. And then we announced it. It was in North Vancouver. And I was surprised when people actually showed up. And so then that's when I realized I had to entertain everyone and do something. So I'm doing a reading in the book aisle. Everyone looks upset. But so this, I was going to lead. So this is a photograph I made that was based off of those images. And this is me, kind of looking depressed, that I then put onto the Wikipedia article for mood disorder. Because everyone knows, I'm sure everyone knows how Wikipedia works. It's anyone could go in and upload information, edit, put in images. And Wikipedia is also copyright free, so anyone could use images without having to pay royalties, whereas all the images in Sad Depressed People were not copyright free. But when I made the book, I obviously used them all illegally. But if you were to follow the law, you would pay you would pay Getty, or a lot of people go onto Wikipedia for free, basically free stock photos. So I put this up. I like to imagine this as like a seed, like someone like threw a seed out in the wind and like forgot about it. And then like a year later, I did a reverse image search onto Google. And so I also like to make clear, like I made the photograph and I put it on mood disorder, and then that was all I did. That was like the gardening. And then I waited I didn't even have to water it. This was good. Postpartum. It is, yeah. But it's also like, so this is black and white, it's cropped a little, here's color. Like sometimes the color changes. So like it's not just an image in circulation, but the image kind of changes too. And there was about, I think around like 200 of them that I found. Obviously there's probably more. And there could even be some in print that I could never find unless just by total chance. It left English. This is cool. So it ended up into another source of free stock images. It ended up in Polish. Yeah. So this is called mood disorder. So like it's like an image in circulation on the internet, but then in the gallery, it's like prints on the wall of the screenshots. I also made an artist book. So a lot of my projects kind of like move through different forms. Let's see. Oh, I didn't show it. So I made an artist book, and this was shown in a new photography exhibition at MoMA in New York, and it was shown as an artist book with 72 books on the wall with each page open. This is a whole other story, which I'm not talking about, but I ended up getting banned from Wikipedia for this other project, and then this image was removed. So this image still kind of circulates, but not as much because it's no longer on the mood disorder webpage. So it's slowed down. So back to time travel. This is another artist book I made from a project I did in Dublin, in which I went to Dublin and lived in Dublin for 2 weeks in this residency, and I stayed on California time the whole time. So I woke up at like 8 in the morning, California time. I went to sleep midnight, California time. And so there was this kind of like disconnect with like my exterior reality and like the temporal physical world I was in and like the time zone I was on. And so this, I always call it a performance, but it's not really a performance, like action or something. It was documented in photographs and texts and emails. And so the book contains these images I made and these texts I wrote. And also if it's shown in an exhibition, it's a slideshow. And so basically a lot of my works are like these kind of actions that happen somewhere in the world and then they get documented in some form. So basically what ended up happening, because like logically you could think like, oh, like I'm gonna go to a new time zone and I won't have to adjust to that time. So I won't ever feel jet lag because I'm gonna stay on California time. But in the end, like your body is trying to naturally adjust to like the rhythms of like the sun and also probably like the social rhythms of society. And so like by the end of like the few weeks, I was like totally out of my mind and like crazy. I would like spend my days walking around Dublin in the middle of the night, like chasing foxes and just being by myself. Kind of like if I wanted to do like some touristy things, so like I wanted to like touch the finger of the mummified crusader or like go to the museum. But to do that, I wake up and eat breakfast, and then I just like run into town to do one thing because I'd have like half an hour before it was 5 o'clock Dublin time. All right, here's another project that was this is almost like the same project. Here's a map of the time zone map of the world, and this little mark is where the longitude line that divides California time zone and the Alaska time zone, where that line falls in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, west of Los Angeles. And for this exhibition in Los Angeles, I wanted to put that line into the gallery. And so what I did was I got on a boat and we sailed west I think it was about 450 nautical miles west to the point of this line, and then I collected 100 gallons of seawater and then put it into the gallery in a north to south line in these glass vessels. So this is lined up in the same orientation. And then in the United States, the Department of Transportation oversees time zone like management and law and stuff. I wrote them a letter telling them that the time zone line had been moved and that they should now recognize this. Like I always like imagine like who opened this. It was like what. But I had a lawyer write this, so the language was very technical and very legal, and it was sent FedEx, signature required, so someone had to sign for it. So they got it, but no one ever replied. I'm still waiting for them, because usually you would get a reply from like an official like organization, at least acknowledging that they got your letter. So that was a few years ago. So in the intro, it was said I do mail art. This is so I think mail art is like this kind of like it's art in the mail. Sorry. This is a California redwood piece of bark that was mailed to this mail art researcher at MoMA. This was, so she's my wife. So she was at MoMA for a researcher for a few years, and I started mailing her like hundreds of things. This was like from a trip in California. This was in Norway. It was actually a shelf that I was using in an exhibition, and I had to cut it. So this was a piece of the exhibition. Some black sand from Brazil. This was in a symbol in this Yanvo Shushu exhibition at the Kitchen in New York. That was mailed like this, so I was imagining it like making sounds along the way. These are some artist books I made that I mailed from Germany without envelope, so that along its transit, someone could read it if they wanted to. This was a book that describes how to shoplift books. And then so Xana had this secret show on her cubicle, and it was called MoMA Cubicle. And so she organized it like a gallery, and like it was private, appointment only, and you just have to email her, and then you could come and see her cubicle. And also there's like, see this painting here that was mailed without an envelope. A lot of watercolors, some pieces of wood. This spray painted cardboard thing from this exhibition, maybe a leaf, all of these found paintings from thrift stores. And at one point, one of her supervisors notified her that because she's an employee of MoMA and she's receiving this at MoMA, all of this is now basically MoMA's property because it's an artwork and she's receiving it on behalf of MoMA. And so at the end, So well, once I heard this, I started mailing more things. Like more like crappy paintings, more pieces of wood. And at the end of her research program, which was like 2 years, all of the works were put in a box and given to the library. So now if you want to see, so now anyone could see them because they're now in MoMA's library and you could just make an appointment. And if anyone is in New York and they want to go to MoMA for free, make an appointment in the library, go check out a book, hang out in there for half an hour, and then go into the museum. So, I had to do that a few times. So I make a lot of my projects are in the artist books, like I said. This was the artist book of this project that was published by Publication Studio in Portland. This is funny. This is totally random. A fake address in Colorado that I mailed this watercolor to that was then returned to her in New York. So this would have went to like Rio Blanco County, and then the post person would have been like, this is not an address, and sent it back to New York. So these are like these things they all have their own journeys, their own little like travels. Sorry, I hear this like hum, but okay. Oh, this was the Norwegian painting that was mailed as a postcard. And it's also fun. Like I'm in like some random town, like doing like an exhibition in like the Arctic Circle in Norway, and I was like every day I just show up at the local post office with like some random thing, and like some old lady is like, oh, here he is again, and like then some painting or like a rock. This is another artist book I made. I've just started making this year, which is basically. I've been making digital photographs, like a snapshot kind of like style of just like everyday kind of things for the past like 15 years, probably since like 2001 or 2 or 3. And these just end up like literally like every day, and they just end up as files in folders and hard drives. And it's like I probably have like 90,000 images. And I don't like it, to me, it's like kind of stressful because it's like there's so much. I can't even look at it because it's too much. And I don't even know what to do with it. So what I started doing about a year ago is I would take whole folders and just print them all out in 4x6 size, and then I would take the folder of the files and delete it permanently. And so then these images are the last, are the only existing trace of that file. And then in my studio, I would then compile these books. If you see me after, I could show you one. I was going to show it on my camera on my computer, but it didn't work. Huh? Let's say it again? Oh, so the question was, what camera did I shoot these with? This would have been these. These right here are iPhone. But from 2002, they would have been like a lot of Sony not Sony, was it Canon point and shoot? The PowerShot. I had like Series 7 and an 8 and a 9 and a 10, and then at some point I switched to a Sony, and at some point I switched to something else. But now it's like my phone, or it's like my point and shoot digital camera. Now mostly my phone. And so then I make them in my, and it's almost, there's a lot of like, I don't use every image when I make the books, because a lot of like, sometimes you shoot like random like stuff and you shoot 100 images of the same thing. But to me, like I print them all, and in my studio I kind of just sit there and like, almost like you're kind of like sketching or like daydreaming, just put them together. If anyone wants to see it later, I have it. And it's kind of funny because they're like, it's in a cheap plastic album that costed 75 cents. And each of the prints were printed on Shutterfly for 15 cents each. But then they become so precious because like, oh my God, it's the last print of this mushroom. I'll never see this mushroom again. So this is like a new series. I'm still like, I've probably made like 50 of them. Here's another book, My Grandma's Recipes. I reproduce all of my grandma's recipes in her recipe drawer. Here's a book. I have this habit of stealing spoons while I travel. And then I sent them to my friend, who's the curator at the New Museum, Helga, who has probably I think she has 2 full shoe boxes of them in her apartment. Probably like, I don't know, like, she says she has like 2,000, but that's impossible. She probably has like 800. But this is an artist book of like, they're just postcards and a little text. This is my artist book section of the talk. This is, how's the time? Oh, 10 minutes. How much? Oh, we're fine. So this is an artist book I made in New York, which had 3 holes drilled in it, and inside the hole was a seed that I collected from honey locust trees that were in Zuccotti Park, which was during the Occupy Wall Street protests. And I collected them in the fall when when the seed pods were mature, and I made this artist book. And this was like an edition of, I don't know, 100 or 200. I made it for my friend who commissioned it. But one of them I buried in my studio. These are my Chinese slippers from Chinatown in New York. And then I just watered it, and the tree started to grow. And so then I had in my studio this artist book that was buried in a pile of dirt with trees growing out of it. I didn't know what to do. So I called a librarian at Bard College in upstate New York at it's the CCS Hessel Museum Library. And I was like, Anne, it's actually over email, I didn't call. Anne, I have an artist book for you. And she said, oh, great, I'd love it. And so then we talked to the horticulturalist on Bard's campus, and I officially was able to donate the book to the library. So the book is now property of the library, but it now exists. The book is still in the ground. So the book is buried, it's still buried. We only kept 1 tree because we couldn't grow 3 trees in there. And this is now growing outside of the library on Bard's campus as part of the library's collection. It's like, but you can't check it out because it's in the ground. It's outside of library use only. So I'm going to slowly wind down. This is a series of glass works I was making. So I'm more trying to tell this story. So we don't even have to think about these works. But these are made from you know what sea glass is when you find like in a river or on a beach? So it's kind of like these like fragments of glass that have been rolling around in the sand for years or decades or even longer, and get polished by the sand and the waves. So I collect these on different beaches, and then I take them to a glass blower, and they get melted together and reblown into new vessels. And because all the different glasses have different chemical properties, they don't fully like coalesce into like a uniform single object. So that's why you get all these cracks. It's like the tension within it. Blah, 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 blah. They look crazy. It's like a screensaver. But, so basically, these were first shown in New York. And I needed to get a bunch of glass. And so I went on this random website I found and was researching different beaches on Long Island. And I clicked on one. So, sorry. This is a photograph of me that I randomly saw on this webpage by total chance from a former Wikipedia project, similar to the mood disorder, but I didn't talk about it because I don't have enough time. And this was, remember how I said like I've always wanted to come across an image in real life, like in print form? This was kind of like that, except it's not in print form. I had never seen this image on this website. And so just by random chance, I just was like, it was kind of funny because like I do a lot of these like projects that are like on the internet and they're like digital and like whatnot. Like these glass is like very much about materiality and like place. And then all of a sudden it's like these digital projects of mine are like haunting it. It's like, you can't get away from us. But that was kind of weird, crazy. And then, okay, we're gonna end with my grandma. So this last piece is kind of like collapsing time, I think. So this is my grandmother in an artist book I made, in a whole other project, where I was driving up the California coast and secretly putting these books into the libraries. And this is her looking at the ocean and Ocean Beach, and the beach in San Francisco. And then this is in New York. This was a project I did for Public Art Fund. Recently, I think it was last October, or no, when was it? November. No, the photograph was in October. It was in, I don't know, it was right after Trump's election, November. And then, so these were, they asked a bunch of artists to make images that would be displayed in public. And this was a photograph I made in Lamar, Colorado, which is near the Kansas border, where there was a Japanese internment camp that my grandmother was at in the 40s. And I made a photograph of the sky, kind of imagining the same stars that she would have seen from the same place 75 years before. And then that was put with this text on these like digital billboards across New York. That's it. But I don't even. Have we slowed down on the?
Are there any other questions? Are there some people? So we have some time definitely for some questions, so I'll just walk around. Thanks for giving me a minute to get you the mic.
So there seems to be this kind of polite interjection and polite disruption with your work, like in a kind of a conversation with your viewers and your audience. Can you talk a little bit about that idea?
Like, what do you mean, like?
Well, like with the seahorses. That was just kind of straight up like going, "Hi, I'm here. Maybe you should be a little bit more aware." Or what was the other piece that really? Or the opening, or the Nautical Dusk. Even that was kind of like you were bringing your viewers and even your curators, like they were having to readjust how they did things. So it's kind of everybody just seems to be disrupted by it, but very politely, like, hey, here's what's going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Freeze project was, the pickpocketing had, I mean, it was, I mean, you could think about it in different ways. It was also like very invasive too. Yeah. Because, I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen. Like, I was like, okay, is someone going to beat this, like, is this guy going to get in a fight with someone? So there was like a lot, so in some projects it's more of a possibility of like this kind of unknown outcome. So in that one, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if something happened. I mean, I don't want anyone to get hurt, but like, just to see, you know, as this kind of unexpected like thing in like the organic process of these works. But I mean, it's the same with like the Nautical Dusk is the same with this. It's like a kind of trying to make you aware of like your own sense of time, like subtly. I mean, time is so subtle, like, you know, like you could pay attention to it passing or you could not. And here I'm trying to kind of get you to think about it. And also with, like in the gallery, like the Nautical Dusk, it's like that, but it's also, I'm trying to like complicate the kind of scheduling system that the gallery is kind of like dependent on, and kind of like making that, trying to mess with that a little.
This is probably on like everyone's mind, but how did you get kicked off Wikipedia?
All right. That was, I mean, so that was this other project in which I was photographing myself on California beaches. That's where the other one, that image showed up, like of these images. This old project. And then basically, I was making these on different beaches in California and putting them onto the location of that beach. And then Wikipedia editors started arguing about, they first caught on to the project, and then they got upset, and then they had these long debates in the background of Wikipedia about what to do, and then the consensus was that like I was banned. That like, it was probably only like 10 people in this conversation too, so it wasn't like hundreds of people on Wikipedia like voting. So it was just someone who was really upset that there was like this guy messing around, even though I don't think I was actually doing anything wrong. I mean, actually, technically, so this is what was interesting, was they had to find something that was, they had to find a rule that I had broken. And so technically I did break the, like I made different usernames. So they're called sock puppetry. And so that was one thing. And also I made a point, does that say that? So, no, someone said that like, you're not supposed to edit a Wikipedia article to make a point. And supposedly I was making a point. But this was the argument. And then once it was decided that I should be banned, then they started taking off the images. Because before they weren't taking them off because they were like trying to play by the rules. This is really funny. Here's 2 photographs of me. This is actually the Mexican-American border in San Diego, in which I was then cropped out of the photograph, and these images were put back up. So here, someone actually thought the photographs were useful, but they were like, let's just like appease the Wikipedia community and we'll just take them out. And this was kind of nice because it was like when you make something public, in public domain, you kind of remove your control. So here I'm like actually removed from the project.
What do you think about nonlinear storytelling?
With nonlinear storytelling?
Yeah. 'Cause time is always linear, no matter what we experience.
Well, I had a piece that was kind of, I didn't talk about, that was nonlinear sound piece. But yeah, I mean, what do I think about it? I don't know. I like it. It's cool. It's like dream time. It's like when things happen before it actually happens or after, and there's no, that's cool. I mean, I don't know.
It's faster.
Do you have any other social media-oriented art pieces that you haven't discussed already? Be it intentionally or unintentionally.
Yes, and I have a really funny one. I don't know where it is. I'm gonna find this. I'm gonna try to talk at the same time that I do this. When I was like 25, I had a Tumblr that was like an art project that I was doing instructional artworks that I was putting on the Tumblr, which actually accidentally turned into a meme of people putting their heads in freezers. Should I talk about it? I don't know. It's too much. Like,
No, it's fine. Go for it.
I don't even know if I have the internet. Well, basically, every day I was sending out an instructional, like kind of like in like the history of like Fluxus or conceptual art, this kind of do-it-yourself like text pieces, and I sent it out on a mailing list. So I was thinking about the mailing list as an artwork, but I was also posting them to Tumblrs because they would like recirculate faster on the internet. And then one of them was to put your head inside of a freezer and photograph yourself and then tag it with this weird long random number like 5527899 whatever. And if you look up this number before I did the project, there was nothing existed online in the search engine. But then after, all these people started using it to put these images online. So then you would use this weird random tag to then find the images. So I did that. I used to do a lot more stuff on the internet when I was younger, and then I got like fed up with the internet, and I like rarely check my email anymore. Because I was like doing it too much, and then I was like, I'm done. But I made an app at one point. Let me show you this project. This is funny. So this is Marcel Duchamp, a book that was published by Badlands, with a Polaroid of my cat. So I had taken this book and a bunch of other books, and I had scanned them and made PDFs and put in Polaroids of my cat in them. Here's another one, the Jonathan Crary book. And then I put it online as a PDF with this idea that like, then my cat would travel with these bootlegs as the PDF gets shared. And this is cool. So it was a, hi David, I think your cat has a doppelganger, or is this your cat? Just opened up my reading assignment for class this week, 24/7 late capitalism and the ends of sleep, when I was sure I saw your cat. So there's a few people who actually were like, what? David, your cat is in this PDF. So this is, it's kind of social media.
The piece that you had that was a letter that was like written by your lawyer, was the ending salutation on that intentional? Because it was really funny.
Was it what?
Was the ending salutation on that intentional? Because it was really funny.
Was it take your time?
No, it was thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Yeah. No, I did that on purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. That was so I have a friend who's, I don't know if I can call her a lawyer. I guess, no, she's not a non-active lawyer. I mean, she studied law. But I always get her to write these contracts for me. So yesterday, or a few days ago, she wrote this contract. My last landlord in Los Angeles, when I moved, never paid back the full security deposit. And I got upset, and he was like, okay, I'll pay it back. Sorry about that, the check will come tomorrow. And the check never came. So what I did was I had my friend write up a contract that legally transferred the money that the landlord owed me to this collector. And I'm having the collector act as a collections agency to the landlord now, who's now trying to, this happened like 2 days ago. So he's now gonna contact the old landlord demanding that he pays him the debt that he now owns, which is only like $190. But she also wrote that letter for the Department of Transportation. She also wrote me a contract in which a collector could only buy an artwork if they're in an altered state of consciousness. And then a lot of these I do spontaneously, and I forget about them, and I don't have any documentation. Yeah.
I was just curious, when or do you remember the first time you questioned the construct of time?
I can't say it publicly. No. No, but I mean, I could think about sometimes. I will tell you a different story. This is funny. This was for a project in the Artists Institute did in New York, and they asked me to do this weekend getaway, and in the mountains in Pennsylvania, and it just so happened everyone was high on mushrooms, and before that I had changed all the clocks in the house, and then everyone's phone had died by this time because it was we had been there for a few days, and I remember my friend's husband being like, what time is it? And everyone was like, whoa, this is yeah. I don't know. No, sorry. That was published somewhere, so I could, it's a public story. It's not a secret. All right.
All right, let's thank him, please.
Thanks, David.